sustainability and being kind to the planet, really, they are talked about terms and agendas of most corporates and governments and people even. But in reality, very little really is being done about it. And this is no different for the architecture, building material, as well as the construction space. But then there are some people like you who are really committed to this cause and really leading by example. And so let me start a little bit by introducing Nripal, who's with us today. He's the founder of Abari, and Abari was established in 2006 in Nepal. It's a socially and environmentally committed research and design firm that examines, encourages, and celebrates the vernacular and traditional materials like bamboo and earth, with an aim to integrate them into contemporary design practices. Abari believes in an economic model where one doesn't have to choose between being kind to the planet and fulfilling the needs of its people. Its processes are slow, yet they move in a human rhythm. And they believe in the spiritual power of earth and bamboo. They believe in that houses should breathe. They believe small is beautiful. And they believe that people and their craft should be celebrated. So for over 17 years, they've worked with earth and bamboo and built over 50 buildings. So before I really start with Nepal and the discussion, there's just a small announcement I'd like to make with regard to our sponsor. Our sponsor for the GreenHeart program is Villeroy and Boch. They are a Bath major and have been around for really long. They've been there since 1748. Sustainability plays a key role with Villeroy and Boch, and it's integral to what they do. All its processes, which have an impact on the environment, are managed by a central environment management system. This allows Villeroy and Boch to implement new technologies and solutions to help use energy and raw materials more efficiently, reduce emissions, and continuously increase product sustainability, even exceeding laws and requirements. So this is not only good for the environment, but also great for the world. And they've received numerous certifications and validations of their efforts. So we are thankful to have a partner like Villeroy and Boch to be part of this journey of GreenHeart and support this cause. So really, I'd like to start with Nripal, and if Nripal, you could share a little bit of a background in terms of how you got to where you are at.
Yeah, thank you for this event and trying to bring in different voices in architecture from different parts of the world. So I grew up in Kathmandu, which is a very small, beautiful town. With at that time it had 1 million people. It was the capital. It's the capital, with beautiful architecture, right? Like amidst the valley, we have beautiful temples with like metallic copper roof. So you look out the window, you see the mountains. It was very idyllic. It was the weather was always good. We never had either an air condition, like forget air conditioning. We didn't even have a fan. So the weather was perfect. Also the houses, how it was built was perfect, right? It was beautiful. It was very conscious of the environment. And when I was traveling, when I was young, I got a lot of opportunity to travel around Nepal with my father. We would go to different mountains, and I was always impressed by the architecture. So it was, it was always embedded in my head, the ephemeral feeling of being in that architectural space, was amazing. I was like, the smell, the scale, the material, the typology, everything was very impressive. But I never realized this as being unique, because we were always told like the earth architecture or the vernacular is a sign of poverty, but I mean, I never felt that. I was, it was like part of me is like, okay, why is it so beautiful, but why is it they're so poor? Why are they so doing beautiful work, but why are they illiterate, you know? So there was a lot of contradiction, you know? So then like from, you know, Kathmandu all the way I went to New York, like a big culture shock. And I couldn't really adapt to the modernist architecture project, you know, it was too sterile for me. So after, you know, about a year and a half, I went back, you know, apprenticeship. I went back and I was like, I went to back to Nepal and I'm like, I want to do something, you know. But again, you know, my young mind was like very restless, kind of curious, don't know what to do. So I was exploring. I was like, you know, for some time I just spent, you know, traveling around Nepal, seeing like what are people building, like, you know, why is there a gap between the vernacular and the contemporary? You know, I was like, and so, you know, unlike New Mexico, Nepal is earthquake prone and there's a lot of rain. So, you know, just earth building would not suffice. So I was looking at different materials. I was looking at bamboo, you know, and I asked people like, why aren't you using bamboo, you know, for your modern construction? So that's how it's started. And, you know, like 17 years later, I'm doing the same thing.
A lot of learnings along the way, a lot of experiences and interesting sort of ideas that must have been onboarded. And now you're clearly in Nepal and you work a lot with bamboo and earth. I think these are the two primary materials that you've taken a shine to. So could you elaborate a little bit about your sort of design principle with this?
So, you know, my approach was, you know, as I told you, I came from art background. You know, I was doing earth, you know, I got into earth not for just purely sake of sustainability, but because of the poetics of it, you know. I loved, you know, those, you know, the old traditional house where they, you know, they wash it, you know, we call it lipen, right? You know, they do a beautiful hand wash and so I love the poetics of it, you know, like, yeah, like one of the structures you see, it's washed, you know, it's plastered with, you know, and traditionally people just use cow dung, and then we experimented with different things. We started with adobe, which is sun-dried bricks, you know. We use wattle and daub, which is, you know, you make a bamboo lathe and then you put plaster on it. And then we tried rammed earth, you know, and you know, so for me it was the poetry of the material, right? So I was fanatic in the beginning. I was like, you know, I will just build with earth, and then, you know, like I could see the moisture problem if I just built with earth, you know, if I don't use any cement in your foundation. So I was like, okay, what could be an alternative? You know, like if I don't put any moisture barrier between the ground, the earth, and earth construction, the moisture will kind of seep in. So and I was looking like traditionally what was the answer and like what is the modern answer. So traditionally, you know, people didn't care at some point because the ground floor used to be for cattle, right? So they'd be like, okay, even if there's moisture, it's not a problem because they would live on the top floor. And so, or they would use a lot of dry stack stone, right? So we didn't have that luxury. So I'm like, okay, what could we do? So then I was like, you know, we talked to some engineers, we talked to clients, and if you put just a layer of a band, you know, just a concrete band, that would work as a moisture barrier, you know, like that small intervention. Then like a lot of things open up. You know, if you look at the data in Nepal, this is like 10 years ago, like 74% of Nepali construction is still earth construction, right? So it's a living tradition. So, but you know, but it's also one of the fastest urbanizing countries in the world. You know, like at 10%. So a lot of people are also moving to concrete. So so I'm always asking, like, why? What are the problems you've had, and like what could be a nice meeting ground, right? So the problem, like traditionally people would say, what's the problem with a traditional house? They would say light and height, you know? So they would have like a smaller window and the height wasn't very high. It's because, you know, we live in a very earthquake prone area. So, you know, you needed big, thick walls, so smaller windows and like a smaller height, you know? So, but then I'm thinking, okay, you know, you want to live in earth, but you don't want to live like how people were living 50, 100 years ago. I mean, what could be a meeting point, right? So then, you know, if I put a reinforcement, you know, just a little reinforcement on the top floor, then I could get a bigger window. You know, I could let a lot of light in. I could increase the height of my building, you know. So I was like, okay, I could, yeah, that's something I could do. About the material, you know, like you're talking about, do we need to stabilize it or not? So we stabilized it in our one of our buildings, but it didn't look nice. You know, it was this, it changed the color. It was, if it didn't, it was not work, like the workmanship wasn't good. You know, it felt like, you know, I call it brown concrete. It didn't feel, it didn't feel right, you know. So then I'm thinking like, okay, and then I had also experimented with a building that didn't have stabilization. But it felt more warm, right? It felt like, it felt it was breathing. It was, you know, there was something like a spiritual quality to it, you know, like you could feel that. So I'm like, okay, we will not stabilize it, you know. And then, you know, we experimented with different pigments, waterproofing pigments, not pigments, waterproofing compounds like milk protein to make it waterproof, right? So, so in our walls, we don't put cement, but we do put bands, so it's earthquake resistant and we can get a bigger space. So it's all about like, you know, judicial use of material, you know. I say I'm not a bamboo Taliban, like where I go like bamboo, 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 bamboo everywhere, right? So I'm like, okay, you know, like for example, we've developed this joint where I can connect like 2, 3, 4 pieces of bamboo in one point using a little bit of metal bracket. So this way, you know, I can create a very large span structure. You know, I can connect 3 or 4 bamboo and create like, you know, 10-meter span, 15-meter span structure without any problem. So it's always been about judicial use of material and seeing what works well, where it works well, you know.
Are you playing with that area at all in terms of moving away from a traditional vernacular expression to building these differently?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I always say we are not conservationists, right? We are not here to be like, okay, just preserve. But also there's certain things to be learned from the tradition also. You know, for example, like, you know, I always ask, you know, what's a modern building? You know, so modern building for me, like if you put it down, if you nail it down, it's like you go away from pitch roof to flat roof, you know. So you get rid of all these, you know, elements that would create certain protection on a building, you know, like the eaves and certain things. So, you know, like straight lines and, you know, like I find for me, like the beautiful part of any building is the roof, you know. For me, it gives, you know, firstly is because I can express my creativity with bamboo, you know, it's lightweight, you know, I can do, but also I find pitch roof to be very, like for example, you see this, you know, we've built, you know, we've worked with a pitched roof here, right? But you know, we've exposed all the bamboo, you know, show the intricacies, you know, like to like make it like a spider web, you know. But we've been very conservative in terms of how the sun pattern moves, how the moisture moves, you know. For example, you know, if you, we all, like you mentioned it before, we are very conscious of like passive solar. So passive, what does passive solar mean? It means like in winter, the sun is, you know, in Nepal about 23 degrees, right? I mean, in winter, it's about 23 degrees. And in summer, it's about, 33 to 35 degrees. So if you have an overhang roof, it works perfectly because it lets the winter sun come in, but it stops the summer sun, right? So, like pitch roof has, it's something that's worked. People have done it for hundreds of years for a certain reason. Here, I'm also like you've seen this design. Like I've left the roof, with the glass, so it can create this suction, and this is bathroom, so it creates a very dry space. And there's enough ventilation, so it's using like certain elements to create this warmth, to create this lightness. But again, with I'm like always playing with my roof. I'm like, okay, how do I? But within this pitch roof paradigm, right? I'm like, I want it passive. I want it. I want good airflow. But I'm like, okay, how do I make it more poetic, more interesting, more, because people are interested by default. Like people who are our clients are like monks, and like people who are into like spirituality, right? They come and they go like, wow, I find this place to be very meditative, it's very warm. And I'm like, yes, it's not because of me, it's because of the material.
Also, you have a unique practice wherein you don't practice through the year, and in the monsoon months, you become a farmer and you start growing bamboo and working to rehabilitate riverfronts and river banks rather. So how does this kind of change from being a design studio to then becoming a farming venture in a sense?
It came by default. I love, like we have 4 seasons, even more. Like, if you look at Hindu calendar, it's 6 seasons. So, like many of our artisans, they grow their own food, like throughout monsoon. And they come, and after they've harvested, they become artisans. So initially I was very frustrated, like we'd be like, okay, with our Western education system, the calendar system is so rigid, right? There's no, it's always 9 to 5, 9 to 5. You have deadlines. You don't consider weather patterns. If you consider that, it's non-professional, right? If I say, hey, we have some festival, so we cannot work, that wouldn't go well with your modern client, right? But I was working with these people, and then it was kind of frustrating. It was like, okay, now we have to go and we have to plant our rice. And I'm like, you know what? I'll give you more money to stay. I'm like, no, it's not about money. We have to go, and like food is important. And then, I was like, after a couple of years, I'm like, wow, it's actually, it's not inefficient, but it's such a beautiful way of living, like you are completely self-sufficient, like I go to their homes, and like the beautiful farms and beautiful earthen houses, like, and there's harvesting rituals, and I'm like, wow, this is I mean, contrary to our modern economic system, I feel they're more richer than we urban people. They have so many festivals, and so I'm like, yeah, I think maybe we should be playing with certain patterns of weather. So then I'm like, okay, we'll take 3 months off. Like, why like bang my head against the wall if people don't want to work? And I started enjoying it, it's like, yeah, we go in monsoon, so, I mean, it's nice, monsoon is great if you're planting, if it's hell if you're building, like it's always like you have to put all the tarps and stuff. But I was like going and like planting and doing things. I'm like, wow, this is such a beautiful time of the year, and then, like, when monsoon starts, the weather gets really nice, everybody's in good mood, and we're building, we're enjoying it. So I'm like, yeah, so we try to follow that pattern.
You have a bamboo farm wherein you grow multiple varieties, I think 26 varieties of bamboo. So are these then cultivated and then used back into your projects? Is that the kind of circularity you envisage?
Exactly. So first thing I was asking, people like, is bamboo, like, why don't you use bamboo? The first problem was because there's termites. So, as I told you before, we did a lot of work to kind of find modern ways of treating it. So that was one problem. The second problem was sourcing bamboo. Like traditionally people would, everybody would have like, one bamboo grove in their farm, right? So they would be like, okay, I need a rafter. Okay, I'll go there, get my bamboo and do. But it was kind of scattered. It was not, it was not very systematic. And, so I was like, okay, we need to change that. So, I'd been reading a lot about like bamboo being like great for river front restoration. So then I was like, I mean, I have so much love for bamboo. Every place I go, I'm like collecting different bamboo. So I'm like, and they grow pretty fast and they take a lot of space. So, so during one of those like, like monsoon periods, I'm like, I worked with a friend of mine who was saying like, if it's really true, let's start planting bamboo. So it started as a hobby, we started planting. So this land, the photo on the left, we'd taken that land, we bought that land. It was like dirt cheap, like it was like about 1 hectare. Yeah, 1 hectare of land was like about, let's say 3 lakh Indian rupees, because it was completely devastated by the flood. And I'm like, okay, it's nice place. Let it be a nice gamble. So we started planting, as a hobby. We planted 1, 2, 3, like, 5 years later, it became like this, the picture on the middle.
Mhm.
8 or 9 years later, it's become a beautiful
Wow,
forest,
forest.
like the
Yeah.
same thing. And it's like, yeah, it's the bamboo is amazing, it's literally grass, you plant something, it just grows and boom, it's so yeah, it was not like again my it's project to like restore like huge piece of land. It was kind of an organic experiment and it
Uh-huh.
happened. And now you go there, there's like there's a lot of flora and fauna, there's like so many beautiful birds, and it's an amazing place.
Your engagement with community, and that really is a bedrock of the practice and of the studio in terms of how you approach work and how you engage with people. And the second thing is about these workshops that I've heard that you host in Kathmandu or in Nepal.
So about community engagement, we I mean, I feel like, one of the biggest problems of our like modern times, especially in our developing countries, is the education. It's not the lack of education, is the nature of education itself, right? So, like as I said before, like our education teaches us to think that we are poor, you know. It 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 makes you embarrassed, like, if uh, like you go to a village and somebody's very embarrassed to show their earthen house, even though it's beautiful, like with 2 story, it's, painted beautifully with earth plaster, it's got amazing, but they feel embarrassed, you know. So, but for me, that's a heritage, and we are losing it, like you go everywhere, you're losing it. Everywhere you see like very homogenized way of construction everywhere. So my engagement with community is not based on charity. I don't believe in that. So I want to like, it's mutual, like, okay, we go and we'll train you, we don't, so we'll train you, you'll work with us for some time, and, like we'll pay you, but you have to be with us for a certain time. We'll teach you how to build, and So this is how we've been like building a community, and like like many of our staff's been with us for like 15, 16 years, and also by default, many of our projects are community based, like for example, we make training halls, and we make like monasteries or schools. And so again, it's already like, working with community, we work with them, like, get them, but it's not like, oh, charity work. We're like, okay. Also, end of the day, they're so receptive because we're building something for them, right? So this is how we engage.
And also these workshops that you host, typically from where do people come to attend these workshops, and uh, what
so
what do
we
you really teach during these workshops?
so we do host workshops, and like sometimes we do it, we do collaboration with different artists. Like for example, last year we had somebody from Spain who came. We did Catalan, vault.
Yes.
So we work with them. So like, how do you integrate bamboo with Catalan vault? Or so we do a lot of experiments. Like we are trying out new things. Like sometimes it's a mini workshops on like earth plasters or charring, or like we are 5 of us or 8 of us, 10 of us, we want to learn certain things, then we can be like, okay, like usually we try to be like, okay, now at this phase of of this year, we're doing roof construction, so we could train you on roof construction. So but we've not been very vigilant going out there and promoting our workshops. Yeah.
Do you think it's needed though? I mean, people like you who are so committed to a cause and have built expertise over your duration of practice to share this learning and to share it with people who are interested.
We do. I mean, we definitely like, first thing, I always start telling about like teaching. I see our own the whole practice itself as a school, right? I mean, we are, like earth construction is not something, there's no like a code, or there's no SOP, there's no standard operating procedure. So every, like, we are trying like, okay, we want to do certain, let's say if you want to learn how to do thatch roof that would last 50 years, it's very little literature or code or certain things you can look at. So it's like we do experiments, and so the whole process itself is an experiment. It's a school. It's we learn, right? So yeah, intrinsically we feel like whole practice itself is disseminating knowledge. And also we feel like there's nothing proprietary. We learn from someone else. It's the problem with the modern economy is everybody wants to guard their secrets, and but we're like, we want to celebrate earth, like it's something, we haven't invented anything. We've learned from someone else, and maybe we tweak certain things for a certain specific context. And we're very happy to share. And during the earthquake, there's so many schools that needed to be rebuilt. And we, as a small architecture firm, we didn't have the bandwidth to go and build all these schools. So what we did is like, made open source design, like, okay, this is how you do the joints, this is how you anchor it to the walls. We gave all the details and we put it out there. And uh, so yeah, that's how we were sharing. And also, yeah, I totally believe we have to share, because a lot of young people, they are like kind of disillusioned by the whole system, but they don't know, and there's no hope. There's like, where do I start? And there's so many people who are like, okay, I want to do this, but where do I start? So I think it is very important to go and teach and do workshops. And
So you have this farming venture that you do in the monsoons. You work with communities. You have a design practice that takes up all of your time, but you also make products and uh, things with bamboo, which are handmade, or I should not say bamboo, handmade products, including this bicycle that I saw, which was developed with bamboo.
it's, I mean, again, as I said, the reason I'm doing bamboo or earth is because of the poetry, you know.
Mhm.
So we always like, you know, I'm always, sometimes I go like, I don't even mind working with steel sometimes, you know, like, you know, but I don't usually, but because I'm more interested in the poetry. So, but bamboo, I'm always like, you know, like trying to push its frontier to see what can be developed, you know. So, and so it doesn't, so, you know, if it can be very monotonous if you just do one thing. I mean, one of the reasons we didn't want to do like this hundreds of schools is it can get very monotonous and boring, right? And so that's why we said, okay, we'll give you the open source design because we want to go and do cool stuff, go like always do interesting stuff. So, and bicycle is one of them, you know, like, so, you know, because bicycle has moving parts, you know, and so, you know, I always tell my students, like, the easiest thing to design is a dam. You know, all you need is a formwork and some concrete, and then the more difficult is you have to build a house, you know, because it has some intricate details and joints. And then it's furniture. It's more difficult than designing a house because it has to be beautiful and strong. You know, it's not like
And it's very intimate. It
exactly,
relates to the body. It touches
exactly.
you very personally.
Exactly, it has to be, yeah, you're touching it. And then, you know, it's a bicycle because it's got moving parts, you know, like it's just smaller things. And then the next one would be a watch, you know, it's so I mean we haven't reached the watch
You
stage
haven't reached the smart bamboo watch, so to speak. So does this actually work? I mean, or
yeah,
is it
yeah, I
just a
mean I'm
prototype
riding my
you can use?
bamboo bicycle
Really?
everywhere,
Wow, amazing,
yeah.
amazing. So practicing what you preach, superb.
Yeah, yeah. It's got, you know, the bamboo's got, it's very ductile, you know, so you can
Yeah,
take the shock, you know. Yeah.
yeah, amazing. So wonderful chatting with you, Nripal. It was really amazing to learn about your practice and to learn about all the wonderful things that you're doing. I'm sure this is just the beginning, and we are going to see a lot more coming in from your studio and from Nepal. So really wonderful.
No, I mean, thanks for doing this event. You know, like I feel, you know, at this point, you know, you look at the news and you look at everybody's talking about gloom and doom, you know, like, oh, the world is going to end, there's climate crisis, there's this and that. Yeah, I mean, there are problems, but also we are also in an amazing period in human history where we can, you know, access materials that like, you know, like people 10,000 years ago accessed, and also very modern materials, you know. It's like, so we can, also an amazing time to make positive things, you know, like to do fun things, and, you know, to make this world a better place. You know, it's not always like, oh, the world is going to end and there's climate crisis. No gloom and doom, you know. I mean, it's, life is short, so we have to kind of enjoy and like do things. And yeah, that's my philosophy.
Great. So celebrate life and design.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so lovely, lovely chatting with you, Nripal. And
Thanks,
I'm
Anish.
sure our paths will cross again. And thanks for taking the time to do this. And thank you for everybody who is tuned in to watching this episode of GreenHeart.